Welcome to this session on leadership and the future of prediction. People always want to predict things. Most of the time is to make more money, but we will see we can also use prediction to anticipate and manage risks. So, where does risk come from? You have risks coming from two sources. The first one is the biggest source of risk. What is it? I'll let you think of it. People, of course. People are the major source of risk. Then the second source of risk we'll be talking about is the environment, or anything that can happen that you do not necessarily have the hands on. But I would argue that even if you get abducted by an alien, I would be wondering if it's not a bit your fault, okay? So we will see that many things happening in the environment, in fact, some people made it happen. And by monitoring these people, you can also monitor what is happening there. So let's start with the environment. If we talk about the environment, so maybe some time ago you heard about this terrible explosion in Lebanon, okay? So something exploded in Lebanon. Let's study that in more detail. Actually, people were trying to do well, you know? They saw this boat coming from Eastern Europe that really looked really bad, and they say, oh, you are carrying chemicals, you are going to Africa, you know what, we'll stop you right here and we'll keep your chemical substances you have on the boat because really we see a big risk. That was a nice thought, that was a nice idea. Issue is then it stayed somewhere in a warehouse for years and years, knowing it's a substance that apparently shouldn't get heated too much, and maybe could even have problem heating on its own. So we don't even know, was it like an accident? Did someone help it? Not very clear. But what becomes even more interesting is researching this substance. You find out actually it's exploding quite often. It's not the first time. So I remember I was in China, we heard about an explosion in Tianjin. And in Tianjin, it was the exact same substance, except they traced it back to a nearby factory of nail polish. And apparently, it exploded because of that. So what happened this time is this product itself is used as a pesticide, but it's also used in another way to make explosions in gold mines. So actually, the product was most probably on its way to Mali, where 1 year ago was discovered the two biggest pieces of gold. So let's summarize it. You have some guys digging gold in Mali. They are shipping some products from Eastern Europe on weird boats. Yeah, because they cannot afford, you know, they don't have the gold yet. And then you have a city that was quite, you know, cautious in Lebanon that is exploding. Okay. So all this could have been prevented for sure, because regularly you have these explosions happening, and actually it has been prevented, and some people now are taking actions. For instance, Senegal used to ship this product to Mali for the gold mines, and when they saw what happened in Lebanon, they calculated how much of the product they had in town, and it's more than what was in Lebanon. They immediately loaded 40 trucks and they evacuated the product from the city of Dakar. So, for sure, most of the risk from the environment somehow is linked to action from people that you can trace and that you can observe. So as a leader, what you need to do is to build a network of experts that you will be using to monitor things, whether it's economical, whether it's environmental, whether it's, you know, about new ways of working from home or pandemic or you name it. So the second source of risks is people. You know, people are, you know, like a bomb waiting to explode, you know. So think of what happened in California, you know. California, you know, it's not necessarily a war zone, but then you have some guys, they're expecting a child. Oh, let's do a gender reveal party for the baby. And then it's the biggest forest fire, you know, in California. So, of course, some things are accidental, but you notice that in some areas, people are a bit too strong on gender reveal parties. Then you also notice mostly is when they have a boy. So maybe for my friend working in insurance, there's a special tax or insurance for this type of families. It sounds very interesting. So in the same way, you know that most of the fire that started, or maybe you don't know, I will tell you now, most of the fire that started in Australia were started by firefighters. You hear me well. So not professional firefighter most of the time, but volunteer firefighter. Oh, let me help you. And in fact, they start the fire. Unbelievable. So they start the fire for two reasons. Some of them actually are a bit pyroman, you know. They just enjoy to look at flames. Well, maybe then go to a metal concert or something else. And the second thing is some of them, maybe they want to be the hero of the day, you know. So I will start a fire and then I come, I help save everybody. So as a leader, you don't want people like that in your teams. So you need to be very careful because often the problem is inside. You also heard about the story of Tesla where an ex-employee tried to somehow involve a current employee in some stealing of IP, intellectual property, but the employee said, no, thank you. I think he said, no, thank you to a lot of money. Maybe he thought it was the company trying to trick him, you don't know, but in the end he said, no, thank you. So you need as a leader to be sure that the people in the company are at the right place, that the right people are doing the right job. What do I mean is if you work in a chemical factory, people who will work in your team, they are not so risk averse. Otherwise, they would not even work in the chemical factory to start with. But you want them to take some risks that are measured. You don't want them to take completely crazy risks. And that's where the screening of your people is important. You need to screen the people on their temperament, on their personality, on their ethics, so that you know in case of unexpected situation, they will behave properly. So we'll talk about the screening again later. The other thing that you need to do with your teams is to provide a minimum of training. But let's face it, you cannot train people to take measured risks. That's the way they are doing it or not. You cannot train people to be ethical. You cannot train people to have faster reflex. You cannot train people to be good at improvising. These are skills people have or they do not have. What you can do as a leader is just to put the people at the right job. You know, if you already have teams that are in place, then we can help, for instance, assess them and put them in the right position. And the ideal is to recruit people with a very special screening. So what we do usually when we recruit is we look at competencies and so on, but you also need to look at people's, you know, at some biomarker, at their physiology, so that you can predict how in a certain context they will be reacting and behaving. Talk a little bit about how to screen people to see if they fit your job in your team. So it's really about matchmaking. You have roles you need to fill that have certain, you know, tasks that need to be accomplished. Some are more into routine. Some are more, you know, freestyling. Some will be more in contact with other people. Some a bit on your own. So you need to have the right people in front of it. So what you will be looking at is, for instance, the temperament. So the temperament is different from emotions. Emotions are triggered by something happening. Temperament is more how you are on a daily basis. Example, when I wake up, no matter what is happening, I'm angry. That's how I am, you know. So why? Because I have a high level of cortisol. So that's how I am. Some people, for instance, they have a temperament they don't trust so much because they have lower level of oxytocin, you know. That's how they are. So what is important is to detect that and to put people in the right jobs. So what can help screen for temperament is hormones, you know, whether you are more influenced by testosterone, by estrogen. So we have a test, maybe you can do it online, called the hormonal quotient, where you can check yourself, you know, what is your hormonal quotient, what is your hormonal profile, and it can tell a bit about your personality. Other things that can be screened is sensory perception. In some jobs, that's really critical. I mean, in some jobs, actually, if you are a pilot or a hostess or you are in the army or whatever, there will be screening for, how can you handle a certain stressful situation? What is your vision like? Yeah. If you work on a chemical plant, maybe you want to have a good sense of smell in case, it smells gas or something that you can be alerted of it. So all this sensory perception is very important. It can also be a reflex. For instance, if you are a professional driver, if you are driving a car or a pilot, they will check your reflex. How fast can you react if something is happening? But often when you work in offices, nothing is really checked. But even if you have an office job, you might need some special skills in terms of reflex, in terms of vision, in terms of scent, or will you be carrying a heavy load or not? So it's important to look at a job really in its entirety. So the other thing you want to be careful about is, of course, but I think that maybe in risk management is already done, the entourage, You can have a great person with a great sense of ethics, but if they are surrounded by people with more questionable objectives, maybe they will flinch. So you have to be careful about that. And also to look at the pack effect. So nothing is worse than a pack effect. It has been documented in a book called Absurd Decisions, that people together, you can take smart people together and then they will do stupid things, because they want to show off, they want to be the boss and so on. An example is motorbikers. When you look at the very bad accidents in motorbiking, usually it's not the pack leader. It's not like the boss of the group of friends that will end up at the hospital or worse. Because when he will take a turn like a crazy guy, in fact for him it's measured risks, because he has the skills to take this turn. So he will, when you look at it, it's almost like he's lying on the ground in the turn, but he can do it. It's the other guy following who is trying to do like him, he does not have the same skills, and then it will be the last turn for him, most probably. So when you are in a team phenomenon, you want to make sure that people are not doing silly things or take unnecessary risk to impress each other, or maybe to impress their manager to get a promotion, knowing that sometimes the leader also has also techniques that are a bit from the past, consisting at challenging people to challenge them. Yeah, but sometimes people don't react so well to this challenge and then will make mistakes. So we talked about how to screen people, because they are the major source of risk, so that you have a team where the right people are at the right job, and also the dynamic of the team is good. People are not making each other worse, but you have some people who are following rules, some people who know how to improvise when there's an exception, and the dynamic is working well. Now, how to screen for risks and predict, risks in the environment. So in ancient times, people were, for instance, in the Roman Empire, people were looking at birds. So it's called bird augury. It means that you check the birds, and based on how they behave, you're like, ooh, something is unusual, something is fishy, or actually birdie in that case. You say, yes, something's birdie is going on. So we tended for generation to mock them, but now it has been discovered that actually the birds, they can see and sense things maybe we cannot. For instance, many birds can see the magnetic field of Earth. So that's why they can navigate and migrate very easily, because they just follow the magnetic field of Earth. Some people can. Actually, Vikings could do it. So they could, during daylight, they could follow the magnetic field of Earth. So if you have some Viking origins, maybe you can do it also, some other tribes as well. So it means that if you look around you, if you help yourself with animals, expert, you name it, you will be able to anticipate unusual. Then you need some more training to make the difference between unusual and problematic. You know, for instance, I was walking in the street, it was fairly empty. I was like, this is unusual. And then I realized, yeah, there must be a football match. And it was a football match. So, okay, nothing to worry about. You can continue with your business. So the interpretation of the unusual is often where there's a lack of skills. For instance, each time I will, take a plane, I'm the suspicious guy. I can tell you that. You have only guys wearing a suit, traveling business, and me. So, the search will be for me each time. So, and then they tell me, it's a random search. I say, yeah, I know, it's each time. So it's random for them, but it's not random for me. So it's important to be able to train, to have a trained eye to detect what would be a risk or what would be an opportunity, because if there's something unusual, it means that things are changing, which opens a window that could be good, that could be bad. So it's about what you will do with it. So another source of information is data. Data. So here I have to put a big warning sign. I used to work in business intelligence, in data. The issue is, what data do you have? I see many companies collecting data because they are easy to collect. And then when you look into the database, you say, wow, you have a lot of information, but not the one we need, not the one we need. Already collecting data about people, you will not necessarily store the right information. Well, maybe that they have their driving license, but that, for instance, they have this diploma. But maybe what would be more interesting is to know that it took them 3 times to pass their driving license, or that, their diploma, they were working at the same time. So often all these more contextual information are not in database. In the same way, if you look at information about the environment, we were working for a company doing fashion. And fashion, what will have an impact on the sales of clothing? It's very directly one thing that will completely change the sales. It's the weather. If it starts being cold, if it starts being warm, people will immediately, buy clothing. And we had this big data system. You had so many information about who bought which product, which day, was he a good client, a new client, you name it, but you didn't have the weather. So it was a complete waste of time. And you cannot trust, people in charge of this data, collecting them, structuring them, to constitute them, to know what should be inside. Yeah, and often what should be inside, actually, you look by the window, you have the information. So, so often the system put in place are way too rigid. They focalize on 1 or 2 data that are not the right one. Whereas agreeing on a major indicator you should be screening at a regular interval is much more interesting. So the way we do it with some of our clients is we spread it within the team. We say, okay, this person will be in charge of screening alien. These people will be in charge of screening movement with environment. With maybe war. These people will be in charge of screening for changes in the way people are working. Are they working from home? Are they not working from home? Okay? So depending on your business, you can spread that within the team. So this will enable each person in the team to become expert on this particular field. And as they are expert, if they see something unusual, they can very quickly know, is it dangerous or not? Or is it unusual but nothing to worry about? Another example on how to predict the future, for instance, let's stay in fashion. Yeah. So I don't know if you are aware of who invented high heels. So I don't know if you are a foot fetish or wearing high heels yourself. But high heels, in fact, were invented by Persian knights. So what we call Iran now was Persia, and the knights at that time, they were trending. So whatever they were doing was fashionable everywhere else, a bit like Asia now, you know. So, and at that time, they realized that to be more stable on the horse, it would be much easier to have small, you know, like heels on the shoes to really block the feet. So they created heels. When people in Europe saw that, ooh, for instance, Louis XIV, so Louis XIV, he saw that, oh, this is so cool. I need these heels. Let's all wear high heels. So in France, in Versailles, they started wearing high heels. But the story is then there was some kind of competition among the guys who would wear the highest heel until Louis XIV say, enough, ça suffit. I'm the only one allowed to wear red heels. So maybe he inspired Christian Louboutin, who made these famous high heels with a red sole. And what happened is girls also, they saw the guys wearing the heels, they say, wow, wow, that's cool, you know, guys, they are powerful, everything, we want to be like them. So they started wearing high heels. So you can clearly predict that what will be the future of shoes for women. You can clearly predict that it's sneakers, you know, because nowadays people into power, they wear sneakers. So, you know, so if girls are looking a bit what's going on, you know, to be on the same level and also get the power, they start wearing sneakers. And it's not a surprise when it has been announced a couple of days ago that Louboutin released its first pair of sneakers in the shape of a shark. You need to check that out. Okay, so the same cause in the same context produces the same effect. So if you understand the cause, if you understand the context, you can predict the future. The good thing is the cause is most of the time it's people. So if you understand people and you understand the context, you can predict what will happen. So the future of prediction, what will it be? I think we were at a time where we were looking at birds, we were looking at a lot of things. Then we went through a phases where we were looking at data and hoping they will tell us something that they are not always. So I think now everything is converging, and the scientific knowledge made a lot of progress. And we can now go back maybe to some ancient ways of looking at the planet, at the stars. Now we are considering again the impact of the movement of the moon on the magnetic field, on people. So we are going back to that to try to explain some of the cycles that we see on Earth, and probably be better at predicting personality, be better at predicting events that are happening and that still look way too mysterious. But at the level of your company, I think that if you have a proper screening in place, you know, and you look a bit broader than just your country or your industry, and you have the right team in place, you know. So if you have a good screening of the environment, if you recruited or put the right people at the right jobs, I think you can fairly say that you did a great job as a leader, yeah? And you are in the right place to manage and anticipate risks. Thank you very much for attending this session, and I can't wait to read all your comments, your questions, hopefully not too many complaints about leadership and the future of prediction. You can also check the audiobook. I think I shared the link to this audiobook where I talk a bit more about the ancient and future practices in the future of prediction. Thank you so much.